The rain had just started to drizzle as Maria walked down the busy street, clutching her old handbag tightly against her side. She could feel the eyes on her, not the friendly kind, but the kind that made her skin prickle. Her beige cardigan was well worn, and her jeans were slightly faded, but they were clean and comfortable. Maria had never been the type to care much for outward appearances, but today she couldn't ignore the glances, the whispers, and the judgment that followed her. Ahead, the large glass doors of the city's fanciest salon glimmered under the streetlights. The place was buzzing with activity. Women dressed in designer outfits came and went, their laughter carrying a sense of privilege and exclusivity. It was the kind of place Maria avoided, not because she couldn't fit in, but because she knew the way people in places like this looked at someone like her. Her skin, her clothes, her quiet demeanor, everything about her seemed to invite scrutiny. But tonight, she wasn't here to avoid them. She had a purpose. As Maria stepped into the salon, a wave of cold air hit her, and with it came a wave of stares. The room was immaculate, with golden accents, chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, and rows of mirrors reflecting the pristine, polished interior. The sound of blow-dryers hummed in the background, mixed with chatter and laughter. She took a deep breath and approached the front desk. Behind the counter stood a woman in a sleek white blazer, her hair tied up in a perfect bun. She looked Maria up and down, her sharp gaze lingering a moment too long. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but clipped, the kind that made it clear she didn't believe Maria belonged there. "I'm here to see someone," Maria replied, keeping her voice steady. The receptionist raised an eyebrow. "Do you have an appointment?" Maria hesitated. "Not exactly, but—" Before she could finish, a voice interrupted. "Excuse me," said a tall, blonde stylist walking by. Her expression was one of barely concealed disdain as she eyed Maria's outfit. "I think you might be in the wrong place. We don't do walk-ins, especially at this hour." The receptionist smirked, but quickly masked it with a professional facade. Maria felt the heat rise to her cheeks. She knew exactly what they were thinking, but she refused to let it show. She stood her ground, her hands gripping the strap of her handbag. "I'm not here for a haircut," she said calmly, meeting their gaze. The blonde stylist crossed her arms, clearly unimpressed. "Well, whatever you're here for, you should probably try somewhere else. This is an upscale salon, and we cater to a certain kind of clientele." Maria's chest tightened, but she took another deep breath. She wasn't here to argue or prove herself. She had learned long ago that people like this fed on the satisfaction of belittling others. Instead, she allowed a small, knowing smile to form on her lips. "Thank you for your insight," she said quietly, "but I'll wait." The stylist huffed and turned on her heel, muttering something under her breath. Maria could hear the faint laughter from a few of the other employees who had overheard the exchange. She ignored them and took a seat in the corner, her head held high despite the discomfort bubbling inside her. Minutes passed and the whispers grew louder. Maria could feel their eyes darting toward her, their judgment like invisible arrows. She caught snippets of their conversation, words like out of place, charity case, and even a soft laugh about her hair, which she had styled herself that morning. It wasn't flashy or trendy, but it was neat and natural, just like Maria liked it. As the evening went on, the tension in the room seemed to thicken. Maria noticed one of the stylists whispering to the receptionist, glancing at her with a smirk before walking away. She could only imagine what they were saying, but she refused to let their pettiness break her resolve. She had come here for a reason, and she wasn't leaving until she had accomplished it. Finally, a woman in a tailored suit emerged from a back room. Her presence immediately commanded respect, and the room fell quiet as she approached. She looked around, her eyes scanning the salon before landing on Maria. For a moment, her expression was unreadable, but then a small smile appeared on her face. "Maria," she said warmly, extending her hand. "Thank you for waiting. Shall we talk in my office?" The receptionist and the blonde stylist exchanged confused glances. Maria stood, her confidence unwavering as she shook the woman's hand. "Of course," she replied. As they walked toward the back, Maria felt the weight of all the stairs behind her. She could hear the murmurs starting again, this time tinged with curiosity. Who was she? Why was the manager treating her with such respect? The door to the office closed behind them, and the noise from the salon faded into silence. Maria sat across from the woman, who leaned forward with a knowing look. "I take it the staff gave you a hard time," she said, her tone apologetic. Maria shrugged. "It wasn't anything I'm not used to." The woman sighed. "It's disappointing, but not surprising. Unfortunately, appearances seem to mean everything to some people." Maria nodded. "That's exactly why I'm here." The woman smiled. "And I couldn't be happier that you are. When should we tell them?" Maria's lips curled into a sleek grin. "Let's give it a moment. I want to see how much further they'll take it." Back in the salon, the whispers continued and the tension mounted. No one had any idea that the woman they had ridiculed and dismissed was, in fact, the owner of the very establishment they prided themselves on. Maria leaned back in her chair, glancing around the cozy office. The polished desk, the framed photos on the wall, and the soft glow of a desk lamp made the room feel worlds apart from the cold, judgmental atmosphere outside. The woman across from her, Elena, had been nothing but kind and understanding from the moment Maria had stepped in. It was a stark contrast to the behavior she faced from the others. "I can't say I'm surprised," Maria said, her voice steady despite the sting of what had just happened in the salon. Places like this always seem to come with their own set of unspoken rules. Rules about who belongs and who doesn't. Elena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's a shame, really. The very industry that should celebrate diversity and individuality often becomes a place of exclusion. I see it more often than I'd like to admit." Maria appreciated Elena's honesty, but it didn't erase the frustration she felt. She had spent years working hard, building something meaningful, and yet, moments like these reminded her that prejudice still had a way of sneaking in. She had always known that appearances could be deceiving, but tonight had been a stark reminder of how quick people were to judge based on nothing more than what they could see. Elena leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "So tell me," she said, her tone curious but kind. "What made you decide to come here tonight? I know you didn't need to, given who you are." Maria hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I wanted to see for myself," she admitted, "to understand the culture here. It's easy to sit in an office and think everything is running smoothly, but the real truth is always out there, where the people are. I needed to know if this place is what I hoped it would be, or if it's just like every other salon I've encountered." Elena's face softened. "And now that you've seen it," she asked gently. Maria gave a small, knowing smile. "I think there's work to be done." Back in the salon, the staff was buzzing with speculation. The receptionist whispered to the blonde stylist, who had been the first to dismiss Maria. "Who do you think she is?" the receptionist asked, glancing toward the office door. "I don't know," the stylist replied, her tone sharp. "But did you see the way Elena greeted her? It was like she was someone important, which, let's be honest, doesn't make any sense. Did you see her clothes?" The receptionist stifled a laugh. "Maybe she's some kind of inspector. You know, one of those undercover ones." The stylist rolled her eyes. "Please, if she's an inspector, then I'm the Queen of England. She's probably here to complain about something. People like her always want something for free." Neither of them noticed another employee listening nearby, a young assistant named Clara. Clara had only been working at the salon for a few months, but she had already seen enough to know that not everyone was treated equally. She had been in Maria's shoes before, judged for her humble beginnings and quiet nature. And now, watching how the others were talking about Maria, Clara felt a pang of frustration. Meanwhile, inside the office, Maria and Elena continued their conversation. Elena had always admired Maria's vision for the salon, a place where everyone, no matter their background, could feel beautiful and valued. But tonight had shown that the reality didn't quite match the vision. You've built something incredible, Elena said sincerely. But it's clear that some of the values we've worked hard to instill haven't reached everyone. Maria nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's not just about running a business, she said. It's about changing the way people think. And that's not something you can achieve overnight. It takes time, effort, and sometimes a little confrontation. Elena raised an eyebrow. Confrontation. Maria's lips twitched into a small smile. Let's just say I have a plan. Back in the main area, Kara decided to take a risk. She approached the receptionist, her voice quiet but firm. Don't you think you're being a little unfair? She asked. The receptionist looked up, startled. What are you talking about? Her, Clara said, gesturing subtly toward the office door. You don't even know her, but you've already decided she doesn't belong here. Why? The blonde stylist overheard and joined the conversation, her arms crossed. Because we can tell, she said dismissively. Look, Clara, I know you're new here, but this is how the world works. People judge, whether you like it or not. It's just reality. Clara frowned. Maybe it is, but that doesn't mean it's right. What if she's someone important? What if she's here for a reason we don't understand? The stylist waved her off. Then we'll deal with it. But until then, don't waste your energy defending someone who probably won't even remember your name. Clara wanted to say more, but she knew it would be pointless. The stylist had already made up her mind, and there was no changing it. Still, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Maria than anyone realized. As the minutes ticked by, the anticipation in the salon grew. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen when Maria finally emerged from the office. The whispers continued, each theory more outlandish than the last, but no one could have predicted the truth. Inside the office, Maria glanced at her watch. I think it's time, she said, standing up. Elena smiled. Are you ready for this? Maria chuckled softly. I've been ready my whole life. Together, they walked back out into the main salon. The room fell silent as every pair of eyes turned toward them. The tension was palpable, and Maria could feel the weight of their judgment still lingering in the air. But this time, she didn't feel small or out of place. She felt powerful. Maria paused in the center of the room, letting the silence stretch just a little longer. Then, with a calm yet commanding voice, she spoke. Thank you all for your hospitality tonight, she began, her words carrying a subtle edge. It's been quite an enlightening experience. The blonde stylist shifted uncomfortably, her confidence wavering. The receptionist fidgeted with a pen, avoiding Maria's gaze. Clara stood in the corner, watching intently, a small smile tugging at her lips. Maria continued, her tone measured but firm. I've seen and heard a lot in the short time I've been here. And while some of it has been disappointing, I want you to know that I'm not here to judge. I'm here to learn, to understand the people who represent this salon, my salon. The room seemed to freeze. For a moment, no one moved, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the weight of her words began to sink in. The receptionist's eyes widened in shock. The blonde stylist's jaw dropped. Clara's smile grew just a little wider. Maria let the silence linger, her gaze sweeping across the room. That's right, she said, her voice steady. I'm the owner of this salon, and tonight, I've learned more about this place than I ever could from a report or a meeting. The room was still as the realization fully hit. No one knew what to say. No one knew how to respond. And as Maria stood there, calm and composed, she knew this was just the beginning. There was so much more to be done, and she was ready for it. The silence in the salon was suffocating. Everyone seemed frozen in place, their minds racing to piece together what Maria had just revealed. The receptionist's face turned pale, and the blonde stylist blinked in disbelief, her earlier confidence crumbling like sand under a wave. Clara stood quietly in the corner, her heart racing, not from fear, but from a sense of quiet vindication. She had felt there was more to Maria, and now she was watching that truth unravel before everyone's eyes. Maria didn't revel in the stunned expressions around her. She wasn't here to embarrass or humiliate anyone, though she couldn't deny that the irony of the situation was striking. Instead, she stood calm, her posture commanding respect. She could feel the weight of her own words, the power they carried, and the responsibility that came with them. "I opened this salon," Maria said, her voice even, "because I believed in creating a space where everyone, clients and employees alike, could feel valued and respected. A place where talent, hard work, and kindness matter more than appearances. But tonight, I've realized that somewhere along the way, we've lost sight of that vision." She turned her gaze toward the blonde stylist, who quickly looked away, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Maria's eyes shifted to the receptionist, who fiddled nervously with the pen in her hand. She wasn't here to call anyone out directly, but she needed them to understand the weight of their actions, the impact of their words. "I came here tonight as a client, not as the owner," Maria continued. "I wanted to see how this salon treats someone who doesn't fit the mold of what you think is right. And what I experienced wasn't just disappointing, it was eye-opening." The tension in the room deepened. Maria could see the guilt flickering in some of their expressions, but she could also sense resistance. Not everyone would be willing to accept what she was saying. Change was never easy, especially when it forced people to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves. Clara stepped forward, her voice breaking the silence. "I think what Maria is saying is important," she said softly but firmly. "We can't grow as a team if we're judging people the moment they walk through the door. That's not why I wanted to work here." Her words hung in the air, and Maria felt a flicker of hope. Clara's courage reminded her of why she had started this journey in the first place, to inspire and empower others, to challenge the status quo, and to create a space where kindness triumphed over judgment. The blonde stylist finally spoke, her voice defensive but tinged with uncertainty. "It's not like we meant to be rude," she said, her arms crossed. We didn't know who you were." Maria raised an eyebrow. "And that's exactly the problem," she replied, her tone firm but not unkind. "It shouldn't matter who I am. Whether I'm the owner, a client, or someone walking in off the street, everyone deserves to be treated with dignity and respect." The stylist's face softened slightly, her defensiveness faltering under Maria's steady gaze. The receptionist, meanwhile, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The reality of the situation was sinking in, and it was clear that the lessons Maria was trying to teach weren't just about business. They were about humanity. Elena, who had been standing quietly by Maria's side, finally spoke. "Maria built this salon on values that matter," she said, her voice calm but authoritative. "And those values have to be reflected in everything we do, from the way we treat our clients to the way we treat each other. Tonight has been a wake-up call for all of us." Maria nodded in agreement. "This isn't just about what happened tonight," she said. "It's about creating a culture where everyone feels welcome, where no one is made to feel small or out of place because of how they look or where they come from. That's the kind of place I want this salon to be, and it's up to all of us to make that happen." The room was quiet again, but this time, the silence felt different. It wasn't the awkward, judgmental stillness that had greeted Maria when she first walked in. It was the kind of silence that comes when people are truly reflecting, when they're grappling with the weight of their actions and the possibility of change. Clara watched the room carefully, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. She had been on the receiving end of judgment more times than she could count, and seeing Maria stand up for what was right gave her a sense of hope she hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe this place could be different. Maybe this moment could be the beginning of something better. But not everyone was ready to embrace that change. The blonde stylist's lips tightened into a thin line, her pride still holding her back. "I just think it's unfair," she said finally, her voice quieter now, but still resistant. "We've worked hard here, and now it feels like we're being judged for one mistake." Maria tilted her head slightly, her gaze thoughtful. "It's not about one mistake," she said gently. "It's about a mindset. We all make mistakes. I've made plenty myself. But what matters is how we respond to them. Do we learn and grow? Or do we dig in our heels and refuse to change? The stylist looked down, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sleeve. Maria could see the struggle in her expression, the internal battle between defensiveness and self-awareness. It wasn't easy to confront your own biases, to admit that you had been wrong. But Maria knew that change didn't happen overnight. It was a process, one that required patience, persistence, and a willingness to listen. Elena stepped forward, her voice warm but firm. "This isn't about pointing fingers or placing blame," she said. "It's about building a better future for this salon, for ourselves, and for our clients. That's what Maria wants, and that's what we should all want." Maria nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude for Elena's support. She turned her gaze back to the room, her voice steady as she spoke. "Change is never easy," she said, "but it's worth it. And I believe in this salon. I believe in all of you. That's why I'm here tonight, not to tear anyone down, but to help us all build something better." The tension in the room began to ease, replaced by a sense of quiet determination. Maria could see the wheels turning in their minds, the beginnings of a shift in perspective. It wouldn't happen all at once, but it was a start. As Maria and Elena walked back toward the office, Clara caught Maria's eye and gave her a small, encouraging nod. Maria smiled in return, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. This was only the beginning of the journey, and there was still much work to be done. But for the first time in a long time, Maria felt hopeful. Change was coming, and she was ready to lead the way. Maria spent the next few days reflecting on what had happened in the salon that evening. The atmosphere had shifted, but she knew that words alone weren't enough to spark meaningful change. Actions were what mattered now, and she was determined to lead by example. Though she had revealed her role as the owner, she had intentionally kept the details of her background private, wanting the focus to remain on the larger lesson rather than herself. But her silence had only fueled curiosity, and whispers began to ripple through the salon. Some of the staff grew uneasy, unsure of where they stood. The blunt stylist Jenna carried herself with a mix of defensiveness and unease. Clara noticed how Jenna avoided eye contact whenever Maria entered the room, her earlier bravado now replaced by an underlying tension. The receptionist Megan tried to maintain a cheerful front, but the guilt lingered in her eyes. Clara, however, felt a growing sense of admiration for Maria. Watching how she handled herself with grace and conviction inspired Clara to step out of her own comfort zone. One evening, after the salon had closed for the day, Maria invited the entire staff to stay for a team meeting. There was hesitation among some, but no one dared to decline. They gathered in the lounge area, the usual chatter replaced by an uneasy quiet. Maria stood before them, her presence commanding but approachable. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of the moment settle before speaking. "I want to share something with you," Maria began, her voice calm but steady. "When I first started this salon, I had nothing but a dream and a determination to prove people wrong. You see, for most of my life, I've been judged for my appearance, whether it was the way I dressed, the color of my skin, or the way I carried myself. People underestimated me, dismissed me, and made assumptions about who I was and what I was capable of. And for a long time, I let their judgments define me." The room was silent, her words sinking in like drops of water on dry soil. Even Jenna seemed captivated, her earlier resistance giving way to genuine curiosity. But one day, Maria continued, her voice growing stronger. "I decided I wasn't going to let anyone else determine my worth. I worked hard, saved every penny, and eventually I was able to open this salon. My goal wasn't just to create a place where people could come for haircuts or treatments. It was to build a space where everyone, no matter who they are, could feel seen, valued, and respected." Her eyes scanned the room, meeting each of theirs in turn. "That's why what happened the other night was so painful," she said, "because it reminded me of all the times I was treated as less than, all the times I was made to feel invisible. And it made me realize that even here, in a space I created, those same judgments were happening." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Clara glanced at Jenna, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Megan looked down at her hands, her face a mix of shame and remorse. But Maria wasn't done. "I'm not here to place blame or point fingers," she said, her tone softening. "I know that change is hard, and I know that we all carry biases, whether we realize it or not. But if we're going to move forward, we have to be willing to confront those biases. We have to hold ourselves to a higher standard." Elena, who had been quietly observing, chimed in. "This isn't just about being good at your job," she said. "It's about the kind of people we want to be. Do we want to be the kind of team that lifts each other up, that makes our clients feel welcome and valued? Or do we want to be the kind of team that judges people based on surface-level assumptions?" Maria nodded, her gaze steady. "I want this salon to be a place of growth, not just professionally, but personally. And that starts with each of us being honest with ourselves about how we treat others. Slash 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 slash." The tension in the room was palpable, but beneath it was a spark of something else. Hope. Clara could feel it, a faint but growing sense that this moment could be a turning point. But not everyone seemed ready to embrace it. Jenna crossed her arms, her expression guarded. "I get what you're saying," Jenna said finally, her voice tinged with defensiveness. "But it feels like we're all being painted with the same brush. Not all of us were rude or judgmental." Maria's gaze softened, but her voice remained firm. "You're right," she said. "Not everyone behaved the same way. But this isn't about singling anyone out. It's about recognizing that as a team, we set the tone for this salon. And if even one person feels unwelcome here, then we all have to take responsibility for creating a culture that allows that to happen." Jenna didn't respond, but Clara noticed the flicker of uncertainty in her expression. It wasn't easy to hear, but deep down, Clara suspected Jenna knew Maria was right. As the meeting continued, Maria introduced a plan for moving forward. She proposed hosting monthly workshops on empathy and inclusion, bringing in speakers who could share their own experiences and insights. She also encouraged the team to have open and honest discussions about their challenges and biases, emphasizing that growth was a collective effort. But the real turning point came when Maria shared a personal story, a moment from her past that had shaped her deeply. She described walking into a high-end salon years ago, dressed in simple clothes, her hair natural and unstyled. The staff had ignored her, whispering behind her back, their judgment loud enough to silence her confidence. She had walked out without saying a word, vowing never to return. "That experience stayed with me," Maria said, her voice tinged with emotion. "And it's what drives me to do better, to be better. I don't want anyone who walks through these doors to ever feel the way I did that day." Her vulnerability struck a chord. Even Jenna looked moved, her earlier defensiveness giving way to something more introspective. Megan wiped a tear from the corner of her eye, her earlier guilt now transforming into resolve. By the end of the meeting, the atmosphere in the room had shifted. The tension was still there, but it was accompanied by a sense of determination. They weren't there yet, but they were taking the first steps towards something better. As Maria locked up the salon that night, she felt a mix of exhaustion and hope. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy, and she knew there would be setbacks. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like the team was starting to understand the heart of what she had built. Walking to her car, Maria noticed Clara lingering by the door. "You handled that so well," Clara said, her voice filled with admiration. "I've never seen someone speak with so much grace and strength." Maria smiled, her heart warmed by the compliment. "Thank you, Clara," she said. "It's not always easy, but it's worth it. And I'm glad you're here to be part of this." As Clara watched Maria drive away, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was more than just a job, it was a chance to be part of something meaningful. But as she turned to head home, a lingering question tugged at her mind. Would the rest of the team embrace the change, or would the divisions prove too deep to mend? The next day, Clara arrived at the salon feeling a sense of anticipation. Maria's words from the meeting had stayed with her, resonating in a way she hadn't expected. The salon was unusually quiet as she stepped inside, the usual buzz of morning energy replaced by an almost eerie stillness. Clara exchanged a quick greeting with Megan, who was unusually subdued. Something felt off, but Clara couldn't quite put her finger on it. As the morning progressed, the reason for the unusual tension became clear. A rumor had started to spread among the staff, and it wasn't a small one. Someone claimed to have overheard a conversation suggesting that Maria wasn't the sole owner of the salon. Whispers circulated that she might have a silent partner who held the real power. Jenna, still grappling with her own insecurities after the meeting, seemed to latch onto the rumor, fanning the flames under the guise of casual conversation. "I mean, think about it," Jenna said to Megan, her voice low but audible enough for Clara to overhear. "How does someone like her start a place like this? It's expensive, it's competitive. Maybe she's just the face of the operation." Megan looked uncomfortable, her loyalty to Maria conflicting with her curiosity. "I don't know," she said cautiously. "Maria doesn't seem like the kind of person who would lie about something like that." Jenna shrugged, her expression calculating. "I'm just saying, it wouldn't be the first time someone put on a front. People like her have to fight hard to be taken seriously. Maybe she got help and didn't want to admit it." Clara's stomach churned as she listened. The insinuations weren't just baseless, they were cruel. And yet, she could see how easily they might take root, especially among those who were still grappling with their own doubts about Maria. Clara knew she had to say something, but she hesitated, unsure of how to address the situation without making things worse. Meanwhile, Maria was oblivious to the brewing storm. She was in her office, finalizing plans for the first empathy workshop. Her focus was on building a stronger team, unaware that the foundation she was trying to strengthen was being quietly undermined. It wasn't until Clara knocked on her door during a brief lull in the afternoon that Maria got her first glimpse of the issue. "Do you have a minute?" Clara asked, her voice tentative but urgent. Maria looked up from her desk, her expression softening when she saw Clara. "Of course, what's on your mind?" Clara hesitated, unsure of how to broach the topic. "I don't know how to say this," she began, "but there's something going around the salon, and I think you should know about it." Maria's brow furrowed, her attention fully on Clara now. "Go on," she said, her voice steady. "There's a rumor," Clara said, her words tumbling out in a rush. "Some of the staff are saying you might not really own the salon, that there's someone else behind the scenes." For a moment, Maria didn't respond. Her expression remained unreadable, but Clara could see the flicker of something in her eyes, hurt, perhaps, or disappointment. Finally, Maria leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. "Thank you for telling me," she said quietly. "I had a feeling not everyone would accept me right away, but I didn't expect this." Clara felt a pang of guilt, even though she hadn't contributed to the rumors. "I don't believe it," she said quickly. "I just thought you should know so you could address it." Maria gave her a small, grateful smile. "I appreciate that, Clara. And you're right. I need to address it. But I need to do it in a way that doesn't escalate the situation." As the day wore on, Maria considered her approach. She knew that directly confronting the rumors could backfire, making her seem defensive or insecure. But ignoring them wasn't an option either. The longer they went unaddressed, the more they would fester, undermining the progress they had made as a team. Maria decided to address the entire staff at the end of the day, framing the discussion as part of their ongoing efforts to build a stronger, more inclusive culture. When the time came, Maria gathered everyone in the lounge. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with unspoken questions and unease. Jenna sat with her arms crossed, her expression guarded, while Megan fidgeted nervously beside her. Clara sat near the back, her gaze steady but concerned. "I want to take a moment to address something that's come to my attention," Maria began, her voice calm but firm. "I understand that there's been some speculation about my role here, about whether I'm the true owner of this salon." She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, the staff hanging on her every word. "I won't lie, hearing those rumors hurt," Maria continued. Not because they question my abilities, but because they undermine the trust I've worked so hard to build. I've been open with you about my journey, about the challenges I've faced and the lessons I've learned, and I want to assure you that everything I've told you is the truth. She looked around the room, her gaze meeting each of theirs in turn. But more than that, I want to ask you something. Why do you think these rumors started? What does it say about us as a team that was so quick to question someone's success, especially when it doesn't fit our preconceived notions? As Maria spoke, Clara felt a sense of awe. Maria wasn't just addressing the rumors, she was turning them into a teachable moment, a chance to push the team toward growth. But even as Maria's words resonated, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the underlying tensions hadn't been fully resolved. There was still a rift in the team, one that couldn't be mended with words alone. And as the team dispersed for the night, Clara overheard a hushed conversation between Jenna and another stylist. "She talks a good game," Jenna whispered, her tone tinged with skepticism. "But I'm not convinced. There's still something she's not telling us." Clara's heart sank. The seeds of doubt were still there, and she knew that until they were addressed, the team would remain divided. But what could Maria do to prove herself without compromising her dignity? And how could Clara support her without overstepping her bounds? As she walked to her car, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that the real challenges were just beginning. The team was at a crossroads, and the decisions they made in the coming days would determine not just the future of the salon, but the relationships they had with one another. And in the background of it all, an unexpected piece of news was about to surface, one that would shake the team to its core and force them to confront their own assumptions in ways they never anticipated. The morning after Maria's heartfelt speech, the salon was buzzing again, but this time with an unusual tension. The staff went about their routines with an unspoken heaviness hanging in the air. Clara could see it in their interactions, smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes, conversations that felt half-hearted. The rumors had left a mark, and even Maria's powerful words hadn't entirely erased the doubt. Maria, as always, appeared calm and focused, but Clara could see the strain beneath her composed demeanor. Maria spent most of the morning in her office, working on upcoming projects, but there was an unmistakable weight in her presence. It wasn't until around lunchtime that the atmosphere shifted dramatically. A sleek black car pulled up in front of the salon, and out stepped an impeccably dressed man carrying a leather briefcase. He walked through the door with the air of someone who commanded respect. Heads turned as he entered, and the room seemed to collectively hold its breath. The man approached the front desk, where Clara was standing. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice warm but authoritative. "I'm looking for Maria." Clara hesitated, glancing toward Maria's office. "She's in the back. May I ask who's asking?" He smiled faintly. "Tell her it's Mr. Lawson. She'll know who I am." Clara nodded and made her way to Maria's office, her mind racing with questions. Maria looked up as Clara knocked lightly on the door. "There's someone here to see you," Clara said cautiously. "He says his name is Mr. Lawson." For a fleeting moment, Maria's expression shifted, an almost imperceptible flicker of recognition and apprehension. Then she nodded, her composure quickly returning. "Thank you, Clara. Please show him in." As Mr. Lawson entered the office, the door closed behind him, leaving the staff outside in a swirl of curiosity. Jenna, ever the instigator, whispered to Megan, "See, I told you there's something going on. Who just shows up like that?" Inside the office, Maria and Mr. Lawson sat across from each other. The conversation began in hushed tones, their words inaudible to anyone outside. Clara tried to focus on her tasks, but her mind kept drifting to the meeting. What could this man's sudden appearance mean? Was he connected to the rumors somehow? After nearly an hour, the door to Maria's office finally opened. Mr. Lawson stepped out, his expression unreadable. He exchanged a polite nod with Clara before leaving the salon. Moments later, Maria emerged, her face calm but her eyes carrying a depth of emotion that hadn't been there before. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Maria called out, her voice firm yet calm. The staff gathered in the lounge, their curiosity palpable. Maria took a deep breath before speaking. "I want to address something that has been weighing on all of us," she began. "The rumors about me, about the ownership of this salon, have created a divide that we can't afford to ignore. So today, I'm going to give you the full story." The room fell silent, every eye on Maria. She looked around, meeting each gaze with quiet strength. "When I started this salon, I didn't do it alone," she admitted. "Mr. Lawson, the man you just saw, was my mentor. He believed in me when no one else did. He provided me with the initial investment to get this place off the ground, but not because he doubted my abilities. He did it because he saw my vision and believed it deserved a chance." Maria paused, letting her words sink in. "But here's the truth. I've repaid every cent he invested. This salon is mine. Every chair, every product, every success story. I've worked tirelessly to make it what it is today, and I've done it with the same determination that I expect from each of you." The staff exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of relief and regret. Maria continued, her voice steady. "I didn't share this story earlier because I didn't think it mattered, but if it helps you see me for who I truly am, then I'm glad to share it now." The room was quiet for a moment before Megan spoke up. "Thank you for telling us, Maria. I think we all owe you an apology." Maria smiled, her eyes softening. "Apologies aren't necessary. What matters is that we learn from this and move forward as a stronger team." As the staff began to disperse, visibly moved by Maria's honesty, Clara noticed Jenna lingering near the back. Her expression was conflicted, her usual bravado replaced by uncertainty. Just as Clara was about to approach her, Maria walked over. "Jenna," Maria said gently, "I know you've had doubts about me, and I understand why. But I hope this clears things up." Jenna looked down, her voice quiet. "It does. I'm sorry for doubting you. I guess I've just been dealing with my own insecurities." Maria placed a reassuring hand on Jenna's shoulder. "We all have insecurities, Jenna. What matters is how we choose to handle them." As the salon returned to its usual rhythm, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted. The air felt lighter, the tension replaced by a newfound sense of unity. But just as she was about to breathe a sigh of relief, Maria approached her with a cryptic smile. "Clara," Maria said, her voice tinged with excitement, "I need to show you something." She led Clara back to her office and opened a drawer, pulling out a folder. Inside were blueprints and sketches for an expansion, another salon, this one in a neighboring city. "I've been working on this in secret," Maria admitted. "But after everything that's happened, I think it's time to involve the team. I want them to see what we can accomplish together." Clara felt a surge of admiration for Maria. Despite everything she had faced, Maria was still looking ahead, still building, still inspiring. And as Clara looked at the plans, she realized that the challenges they had overcome were just the beginning of something even greater.